Now, while the International Court of Justice is yet to announce its decision, a former leader of the Black Consciousness movement says this moment, in fact, provides South Africa with a chance to look back to the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. Professor Saths Cooper says it is concerning that some of the recommendations that were made by the TRC are gathering dust, and also looking at some of the families that continue to lament where some of these recommendations are finding themselves right now. And Professor Saths Cooper, Pan-African Psychology Union President, joins us live now. Thank you so much, Prof, for your time. We've seen the announcement, for example, of 34 investigators, an inquest into the murders of the Craddock Four, and other announcements that were made when it comes to some of the TRC matters. Now, reading your opinion piece, it sounds like you argue for a more concerted approach towards ensuring that those responsible for some of the atrocities that we've seen in the past are actually brought to justice.
Most definitely. I think we have tended to blame documents, if you like. We have blamed the TRC report for not doing what we expected in our democracy. Similarly, we've blamed the constitution of this country for not doing anything. Now, these are documents. One is a report, and the other is our constitutional basis. We have not looked at who's responsible. Of course, very clearly, up front, our leadership is responsible, but there are certain sectors that have managed to get away. We should recall that these sectors, especially business, big business, which benefited through the advent of colonization in this country a few centuries, and then through the apartheid era, have benefited more during democracy than I would say has any other single group in this country. So we need actually to be aware of the fact that big business was really non-committal in how they presented themselves at the TRC in a wishy-washy way, and instead chose the route, and I'll quote President Ramaphosa when he concluded the Constitutional Assembly in Parliament and said he was going to join Patriotic Capital. Now, there have been a few successful cases like him, but generally, our people are living in the worst squalor, the kinds of headlines that have just preceded this bulletin and will continue unremittingly to be played out over time if we don't do something about the huge gap that exists between the filthily rich and the drastically poor.
I'm going to get to how we reconcile and read the report and really engage with it right now. But let me stay with what you say about business, because it's quite important. So what role does then business begin to play, in your view, especially when it comes to accountability and redress, listening to what you've just said?
Well, look, we've had more recently the spectacle of a few years of Zondo. We've had another report that is likely to gather dust. We haven't seen people paying the price for what they've done. A few examples, notably SAP recently announced it would be paying back a certain amount, etc. But some of it is because they were found wanting overseas. So in turn, here, they've not been held accountable. And I would dare say it's because the likes of Saths Cooper, etc., are sitting on their boards locally or beneficiaries. So we need to look at that and break through the veil that seems to prevent the richest country on the continent from ensuring that we don't rely on social grants, which I believe you're going to cover in this segment shortly. We're making beggars of the majority of our people in the land of their birth. And yet we have the ability to change that picture. We're not changing it because we've cozied to big business and we've played their game instead of making it compatible with where this country ought to go. Indeed, while many countries, our neighboring country, Namibia, for instance, many Caribbean countries are seeking reparations from those who have extracted from their economies. We don't do that. And we are still a largely extractive economy with mining wealth going out, beneficiated elsewhere, coming back at huge exchange rate prices to local buyers and so on. So there is something seriously wrong with the unequal and grossly disproportionate economic system that continues to leave the majority outside. They stay on the periphery, and a few live in the castle on the top of the hill. That castle is worth nothing if the people that you have to pass live in sheer wantonness.
In your reading then of it, Professor Cooper, is it just only a cozying up to do business, or is it also coupled with that almost like an indication of not knowing what to do with the current problems, how to resolve them, or do we have the answers and simply not implementing them? I don't know.
Look, we have had the answers in the halcyon Mandela days, 94, 95. I would give it up to 96. In those halcyon days, we talked reconciliation. Everybody was heady. The Rugby World Cup happened and we went rah-rah. Then we started to become realistic and Thabo Mbeki took over. He has consistently raised capital flight, has consistently raised the issues of fabrication of what should have been fabricated here. Our unions have lost the plot because they've participated, they've become partners with those very same exploiters instead of holding those exploiters to account. So they have joined those exploitative boardrooms, giving them credibility. So now we see captains of industry holding forth, threatening us with all sorts of reactions if we dare do anything. I think we lost the plot. We simply lost the plot. I'm sorry, the light just went off. We simply lost the plot on how we should do it, and they have co-opted us. I think there's no other word for it but co-optation, and a few of us have benefited. It's time that we also, who have benefited, come clean. We need a TRC, if you like, of new business now, because the JSC is not in a good shape, and things are going to get worse with the hundreds of political parties entering the fray. We need to have an understanding of what is to happen in our economic system, which we have not seriously tackled. The last bastion of apartheid and exploitation and colonization is the economic one, and we need to foreground that.
You've certainly opened the lid to a very important conversation, but let me thank you for your time, and certainly this is one to circle back to, especially as the country goes to an election. What does it all then mean, especially when one is listening to what you're saying? But let's leave it there for now. Thank you so much for your time. That is Professor Saths Cooper, Pan-African Psychology Union President.